Ooh, that's my jam. Hello, and welcome to another wonderful show of the Sofa Real Talk on Facebook Live. And you know something, this is a side note of I never really get used to. You're actually supposed to look at the camera and not the screen. So you know, I got a big uh, 55-inch TV that my monitor use for my monitor. So I'm looking up there and knowing I'm supposed to be looking at the screen. So yeah. Anyway, but as you can see, guys, titles, just plain and simple, titles. You know, a definition, short to the point, give a name to. Everyone wants a title, but can you take on the definition of such? Do you think you can expound a little bit on that there, Miss Whitney?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again, as always, for having me. And for this particular discussion, we're talking about titles. And most people believe that a title will afford them some type of responsibility of that other person's handling of their interaction. And that's one of the important things about having a title. And further into the discussion tonight, we'll get into the difference between a name and a title, because there is a difference, even though they are closely connected.
Yes, you are totally correct. And it's funny that you go into detail like that because this lovely next slide kind of states that having a title in a relationship is all about status, but it's not just an old status, it's an official status and one that should be at least equal to, if not surpassing, the status of the previous woman or man who have had the property deeds, because for some reason we all think that people are properties. It's a status that needs to be acknowledged by him or her, and ideally by your peers and anyone else you think need to know. So, um, I talk about titles in so many ways in a lot of the shows prior to this one, and mainly some of the titles that I too much don't care for are the glorified side pieces, and not to downplay anybody, but I just it's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that you would rather be a lower end of someone's attention, why they give majority, if not 100% of their attention to someone else. And then before we came on, I was telling Miss Whitney that I myself have played the role of side piece, not on purpose. I didn't sign up for it. You know, I didn't go get an agent and it's like, hey, so I really need these side piece roles. I'm like, seriously, I think that's gonna like put me in, you know, and finally find somebody. Nah, I was like forced into the roles, and it wasn't after I broke up with. Oh well, I didn't even break up with people until after they left me. I realized that, dang, I thought I was like the official superstar of their lifetime movie, but I was really a co-star, and my roles were like short lived, and it's just hard and sad for me to just constantly see on TikTok, just social media in general, how it's glorified. You stated that you had a story yourself about this.
Yes. I remember a friend of mine had gotten herself into some trouble and went to jail for it.
Ooh,
So I would go with her sister to the jail to visit her on the weekly occasions or the bi-weekly occasions that we could. And of course, if you go into a jail, you have to sign in and things of that sort. And some kind of way, I started a conversation with the corrections officer who was very frank about
Okay.
his disdain for some of the attitudes that the women were bringing to sign in to visit whoever they're visiting in jail.
Okay.
He found such a problem with how proud they were when they say, my relationship to the person in jail, I'm his baby mama.
Okay. Wow.
They were proud to say that. And it was annoying to him how proud they were to declare that that was their relationship to the man that they were visiting. And I thought that was an interesting situation because people ask, what's the difference between a father and a baby daddy? The,
A lot.
the father is the relationship to the child. Baby daddy is the relationship he has to the mother.
Yeah.
And those are the distinctions in that, as far as I can tell right now. But when she was saying I'm his baby mama, she wasn't bringing any girlfriend, wife,
Yes.
fiance. It was baby mama, and that's how proud she was of it. I had seen that, but to hear that attitude projected from a corrections officer was
Hmm.
striking to me. I really had to sit and think about that for a second because I know that I felt like that. But, to hear him say that was just a different level of consciousness about how proud people can be of being second best in somebody's relationship, like the way that you were saying.
You know, if you really think about, school has started to promote this same nature. And I'm not going to say everybody doesn't need some form of recognition, but a a competition is exactly what it is, a competition. So if you have a track meet, um, I'm not sure if they, I'm not going to use that as an example. I would probably say, let's say basketball, football, and where your season is over and then you're going to the trophy ceremony where people are getting trophies for, best rebounder, best point scored. And these people get, those players get those trophies, but then at the same time, you do have that particular trophy that has being established that everybody gets just because they were part of a team. I can't remember what they call it. Um,
Participation trophy.
yes, the participation trophy. And I'm gonna be honest, some kids really just don't participate,
Right.
and I don't think it's fair to those that do participate. And I say this only to come back full circle to how I despise when people tend to go out and get side pieces. So now you have there's supposed to be MVP, which is supposed to be the main chick, main man, whichever one you are, how you see your partner, your main partner, right?
Hmm.
And then you go out and you go get a extra partner. This extra partner may not get but so many hours a week, and this side partner is going to be looking for that same form of trophy after so long. Definitely, if it's years in the making, they're going to start looking for more time. They're going to be like, Coach, I'm starting to get better at my game, so I think I'm starting like
Material.
material.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I start now? And coach is like, you know, listen, we've already gone over this year, last year. You you're a role player. You know, you go ahead and play your role, and it gets hard, and then some of those, and I'm going to use the vindictive word, um, bitter, and this goes both ways, men and women. They become bitter and vindictive, and they start wondering, so what does this person has that I don't, that you can't just forget about them because I'm going way and beyond. And regardless if it was established at the very beginning of the relationship, you do know what this is, right? Just bumping and grinding. That's it. Bumping and grinding. Bumping
Pretty
and
much,
grinding. Nothing else.
yeah.
And so I think a lot of people go in with the idea of it may start off as just the bump and the grind, but like always, sex brings emotions, sex brings feelings, sex brings attachments,
Hmm.
let alone if you end up pregnant. That is even a whole nother ball game in itself.
Yeah, primarily as responsibility for the woman though, because if a man impregnates a woman, he can still walk away. It's still his responsibility, but it won't be borne in equal portion at by any stretch.
Lisa stated that because I was telling her about, I just made a post on TikTok about how it, and this was another reason for the TikTok was kind of segueing off this title being titles, that it should become mandatory that regardless if you're in a relationship, committed relationship for years, heck, married for years, and you decide to have a child, when birth, there should automatically be a paternity test. And
That's fine.
I I say this only because, which I know a lot of people probably will cuss me out. I've had a couple of people say, "Hey, I see where you're coming from," and it doesn't matter if you agree or not. And I'm just looking at the child's well-being because there are so many of us that are out playing the field, swear that we're committed, come down to birth. You know for a fact that this child may not be his, but the fact that that relationship probably didn't work out, or you realize that that person is not going to be the father of your child that you think, but then you have this good person here, so you're just going to go ahead and push it over with this person, and then later on down the line, this child finds out it's not their dad. The dad finds out it's not the child. You get mad. The dad sits and say, "I don't want to have nothing to do with this child. You had no business doing that to me," or and whatnot. I think it would just maybe slow down a lot of that because that ideal of shoot, even though that hunk looks nice, but if I go over there and I play with it and end up pregnant and I'm in this marriage, knowing if we have a baby, the hospitals are going to automatically do a blood test and they're going to be like, Miss, what you call it? Uh, he's not the dad, you know?
Legally, if a woman is married, legally, if a married woman has a child, the assumption is that it belongs to the husband. The automatic paternity test, I'm not sure when that started, but legally, that's how it used to be. If a woman was married and she had a child, it was automatically the husband's. There were no real questions about it.
Oh,
The,
it's something that it is not something that's mandatory. I was just throwing it out there that I just my opinion. I think that would be a somewhat awkward but cool mandatory thing to have
I don't
due
disagree
to.
with that, though. I don't disagree with that at all. The contrast that I was trying to illustrate was that if the woman is married, the child
Mhm.
is assumed to be the husband's. But
Yes.
if not, then what you're talking about makes a lot of sense, actually, and it prevents a lot of heartache later down in the future. So I don't disagree with that at all. I was just
Yeah.
saying that if she's married, it's assumed to be the husband's. So they wouldn't automatically do a paternity test. But in
Yeah, and well,
marriage,
see,
absolutely.
it happens. You know, I've I have little girl that I still call my daughter, but she knows I'm not her dad, but she still carries my last name. But her mom has told her that I am not her dad and doesn't want me to have anything to do with her, but she won't change her last name. And I guess I'm kind of weirded out by that, that you don't want me to have anything to do with her, but you won't change her last name. So at least change it to your name. I'm not even sure she even knows who her actual dad is, but I would think that you would change it to your name. But you know, some folks are just kind of, I would say, a little cheap and don't want to go through that process or whatnot. But
Has she ever explained? Has she ever explained why she wouldn't?
oh no, she won't talk to me. And even my kids, one of my kids, her brother is like, he didn't see the point of changing it neither. But I was like, still, she's attached to someone that her mom has made it perfectly clear and put in her head not to be a part of. So it's almost like you got a part of a lineage attached to you that right the mom don't want to know about or is too taboo to know about.
It's funny that that's where the discussion is taking us, because it brings out a couple of points that I wanted to highlight in our discussion about titles and the difference between a title and a name.
Mm-hmm.
A title, as we're talking about, is it gives something an identity, and that kind of helps you determine how to handle it. And labels do the same thing in that sense. So for a lot of the discussion that we're talking about as it pertains to relationships, a title and a label are interchangeable for this
Yes.
context. Not all the time, but for this context, for this discussion that we're having right now. Another thing a title does is to define responsibility.
Mm.
If I am your wife, there are things you do in our relationship that you don't do in others. If I am your girlfriend, there are things you do in our relationship that you don't do in others that you may not still do because I'm not your wife. You see where we're going with this? If I am your friend, another title, another label, there are privileges in your interaction that I am limited to as a friend that a
Yes.
girlfriend or a wife would be fully privy to.
Yes.
And so when we deal with titles in that sense, one of the reasons for it is that it establishes that person's role, that person's responsibility to you. And it shows, it sets the parameters of your interaction. Now, also, we have titles if we're talking about English royalty, that their authority, their rank,
Mm-hmm.
their title, all of those types of things still allocate a level of responsibility that you expect from that person in that particular position. And what's the difference between a name and a title?
Uh-huh.
A name is descriptive. That's it. If I'm looking at three men, here's Adam, here's Billy, here's Charles. If I go in and I want to say which one of these men is Adam, looking at the three men, I know Adam's face. That's Adam's name. That one is Adam, as opposed to being Billy or Charles.
Right.
Names are only distinctive. That's it. But Adam is my husband. Billy is my brother. Charles is my coworker. You see where the title makes a difference, because
Yes.
it illustrates the parameters in the relationship that you have with that person. We were talking earlier about the titles: side chick, baby mama, baby daddy, side piece, whatever they want to
Mm-hmm.
call themselves. Ironically, people who've adopted those titles and labels in reference to themselves or others have properly used what a title is supposed to do. By those titles, they have set the parameters for their relationship with that person. As
Yes.
a side chick, side piece, well,
Yes.
I had in my mind and in my book another term for a male side piece. and it rhymes with side chick, and it's side D. It's the same premise, just a rhyming term for it. But the point is, those people who, yeah, you heard that in your mind. You got it.
I was finna say I had to stop. Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right.
But the people who have embraced those titles in reference to themselves have stated in doing so that this is that person's responsibility to me and no more. This is all that I should expect from this person and no more, because that is my title. What they've done is taken, in some cases, the value of what is supposed to be a title, girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, husband, wife, etc., and relegated it to the convenience of their dysfunctional interaction.
Yes. I was going to say, because you said something about the royalty and all that. And if you think, wife, husband should be considered some form of royalty when it becomes like in a relationship, and girlfriend should be like girlfriend, boyfriend should be below that ranking wise, and friends a little bit below that. And
absolutely.
So okay,
absolutely. And when people I say this a lot, but I don't know how many people really receive what I'm talking about. When people who are in committed relationships and they say, give it a title, girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, we are in a relationship. When they separate, the law does not provide for significant others the way that it does for the separation and division of property for married people. As of January 2017, in some states, there is no such thing anymore as common law marriage. However,
they've changed it in every state now?
I don't know if it's every state on that date, but the tone in the legal circles is that a common law marriage will eventually be established. If you were common law married before that abolishment date, then your common law marriage is still recognized. But if you were not common law marriage before that date cuts it off, it doesn't matter if you're together for 20 years after that. There is no more such thing as common law marriage. And
I have something to say with that, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, I believe that the reason for that becomes what responsibilities, rights, and privileges a spouse would legally have to certain property or certain money or certain things of the person who may have died, or they may be just separating, that people who are common law married begin to take those privileges unto themselves because they've been together so long, even though they're not legally married. So the law says, okay, hey, let's get rid of that. If you're married, this is what goes. If you're not, this is where it is. Point blank, no confusion, no common law marriage, nothing. That's just the way it is. And people, I've found, want titles in order to be given certain of these privileges. And without the high and lofty sanctity that titles were supposed to have, they're not experiencing the fulfillment of those things.
So Ms. Jalissa states, yes, if you're not married, it should be mandatory. But yeah, Jalissa, even with marriage, I just think it should be mandatory just across the board. And I'm only speaking in the sense of if that was something that somebody just brought to the table and said, you know what, I think this should be something that we should do. I don't think it should be a sense of, oh, well, they're married, they should be good, because that's where you find more of the infidelity going on outside of just standard relationships, where a woman ends up, and I'm going to say, teensy-weensy bit mistakes being made sometimes with people, and they get pregnant and they run, then they run home and they have sex with their husband because they know it's a slick chance that they may get pregnant, so I gotta go and do this, and so I can sit and say, yeah, we had sex around about that same window, but then your baby come out green, and you trying to figure, like, yeah. So now, regardless if you're married, regardless of not married or not, you still should be able to do it. She also states, this is right on time. Great content, guys. Appreciate it, ma'am. And she also agreed with some information you said. She realized I'm afraid of a title.
Mhm.
A lot of people are, because once you get that title, unfortunately, in so many ways, that means you're in and you're fully fledged and you're supposed to be committed. And some folks are really not ready for those commitment. But going back to how all the titles have been misconstrued, where they've been adapted, which hits the side piece. I don't want that commitment, or friends with benefits. I don't want that commitment. I don't want you staying at my house all day long. I don't want to be at your house doing your dishes, but I do want that sex though. I do want that time though. Take me out to eat, spend money on me, make me feel good. But it's not a clock. Time for me to go home to my kids. So we need to separate ourselves. I'll see you later type thing. And I I really personally feel and see that as just grotesque to a certain degree, only because I'm a family man. And hey, to each his own. A lot of folks don't want to get married. And so I'm not knocking a person that doesn't want to get married and they're dating. They're doing dating. If you're dating, you're dating. And you just happen to partake in sex, and that you and that person understand what you're going through, seriously, that's you guys. But on my standpoint, I I don't want to play those games with those people. And if I come to you with something, I'm looking for a committed relationship. And you'll be very surprised. A lot of side pieces, regardless if they're male or female, are doing the same, which hence for us to come to this part of the show. Why do we need a title?
Mhm. Mhm.
Why do we need a title? People feel by knowing where they stand in the relationship, it will work out better for them. And we were just basically hitting on that pretty much. And that's really not true though, because just be hypothetically, let's say me, you, Miss Whitney, hey, we walked the aisle, we got married. Now you have the title of me being you being my wife, right? Then I just did it on a whim, but I'm over here still slanging thingamajigs over here, thingamajigs over here,
D is
like
saying.
that. That title for you, really, what does that mean if I'm over here doing this? It's like none and void.
You're absolutely right about that. And the value in having a title is that that person's responsibility to it will be what that title is supposed to mean.
Hmm.
So if you're married and you're still sleeping around, being married doesn't matter. Being
Nope.
being that you've taken that vow has no value because you're not acting like the that you're not acting in accordance to the vow that you've taken. So I totally understand that there are people who have the titles, but the titles haven't manifest to the benefit that they thought that it would in the first place. We're actually um, at we're I don't want to say running ahead, but there was one thing I wanted to point out of what you were saying before about the person who is okay with being the side piece. I don't want a relationship. I want to have sex with you. I want your time. But when I get ready to go home, I'm going. When I need you to get out of my house, you get out.
Yeah.
I do not believe, like you said, that there's anything wrong with that if that's where they are, but
Hmm.
that's not where a lot of people want to find their substance. That's not
No.
what that's not the kind of relationship that a lot of people want. And that introduces the problem of being on those different pages, where you started out saying that you begin this thinking, okay, yeah, this is about sex and we both understand that. But down the line, some feelings develop. And now all of a sudden, it can't just be about sex anymore because one of the people isn't satisfied with just that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get into situations like that, we're looking at the person who wants what the title is supposed to be,
Mm.
not just to have the title in name and or have the title nominally. That's another thing that we also say, that you just have that boyfriend just to say you have a boyfriend. He takes your
Yep.
money, he eats your food, he cleans out your house, he doesn't do
Yep.
anything for you. He's just a boyfriend and say you have a boyfriend.
Yep.
And it goes that way for girlfriends too. But most of the time, the situation is that a woman is with a man who's not really bringing any value to her life, but for her to be able to say, I have a boyfriend. And he might be cheating. We don't know. He might be faithful, just not beneficial to her life. We don't know. But either way, the only thing he gives her is the ability to say that she has a boyfriend. He's not contributing to her growth as a person in any other way but that. So I totally understand and I get you that having a title isn't necessarily synonymous with the value that the title is supposed to bring. But what that title is supposed to bring is what most people are looking for. That's what I was trying to say.
And the thing is, and you're right. I second that. And I also want to add, not only are people looking deliberately for these titles for these specific reasons, it comes to change when you realize that the job description for the role that you're asking to take on is a little bit more than what you thought. Not saying that it's still not the role that you want, but what you have to put in. And I think that talking to a lot of people here recently, not wanting to put in time. And when I say put in time, I'm not meaning where you find yourself in a horrible relationship, you're getting abused, mistreated, and a lot of people still tend to say, well, you got to work it out, you got to stay there, and you're married, just you go get help. Well, you done tried counseling. Person might not even want to go to counseling, so there's an issue right there.
Yeah,
Or the counseling just didn't work.
right.
Things are still going on. So I feel deep in my heart, and I have yet to hear a preacher or yet to see a scripture saying that God said marriage should be hell, which for me opens a door outside of infidelity, for you to separate yourself, because marriage should not be built off of fear, pain. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have trials and tribulations when you go through marriage, because you're constantly learning each other. You're constantly growing. You're constantly going to have storms that you probably never have had by yourself, let alone with another person
Mhm.
beside you. So those type of things, yes, I dig in. You try to figure those things out. You toughing it out, but all these other things, people don't walk away from those bad things, but they walk away from, oh, hey, he snores too much at night. Have you ever thought that maybe this person might need to have sleep apnea?
I totally understand what you're saying. I totally agree with it also. I have never seen that scripture that says marriage should be hell. Yeah, that's not in there. There's a certain self-proclaimed relationship guru who says exactly to women that you shouldn't get married to be happy. And there are unfortunately people who still listen to him. His name is I'm not going to even call his name for the foolishness. But the point is,
Yeah,
he is
yeah.
dead wrong about that. Marriage should look more like exactly what you're talking about. We're not saying that everything is going to be simple, but they're things that you fight through to make it work. Those things that you fight through to make it work do not include being abused. They do not include being taken advantage of. They do not include those things that demean you as a human being for that other person's convenience. Those are not things that you work through in a marital situation. That should not be a part of what you think your marriage should be based on. I fully agree with you on that. And then, yes, there are people who leave solid relationships over foolish things. Most of the times when that happens, it's because they want it out anyway. And that simple thing is enough of an excuse to just go ahead and, throw in the towel. Now, for me, when we think about this larger notion of till death do us part.
Don't bring that up.
In it for better or worse, rich or poor, sickness and health, good and bad, all of those things. This caveat that I'm about to share is implied, but nobody pulls it out. Okay, I'm going to pull it out right now.
Okay.
When you say for better or worse, I am vowing my loyalty to you, my fidelity to you. I am vowing all of that to you for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
That deals with the things that life is going to thrust our way, no matter what happens. Death, job change, sickness, all of those types of things are things that life can throw at us as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Death do us part does not include your adultery.
Yes.
Death do us part does not include you quitting your job to grow ant eyelashes in a synthetic petri dish. Till death do us part does not include the foolish things that you do that complicate our lives. There's a difference between the vows that I take to stand by your side, come what may, and the things that you create as problems for us. I don't know that is the same. I, as a matter of fact, I'm saying for my own experience that it's not.
It is not the same. It is not the same. It is not the same. Again, but it emphasized on what I was just stating about how sickness and health. A lot of people run from the sickness and health after even saying it. Somebody gets sick and they can't, especially I'm not going to pick on the women and say it's just women, but a lot of women will step away from a man that can't do anything and they have to take care of a man. But I do know there are a lot of men that if a woman gets down because she can't take care of home or take care of the kids, especially if he's not that type of person and he don't want to do the role change, reassignment, definitely he goes out to find somebody else that's more healthier.
Or he brings in a second wife.
That. Yeah, I've actually heard of that. I've heard people have wives that have dementia and they've brought someone else in. And so that in itself, I'm like, you run from that, but again, you don't run from prime example. Earlier today, someone asked somebody on the radio station, they had issues with a sex transmitted disease while they were pregnant. Their boyfriend for how many odd years ended up having this. I can't remember if they say they got it, but they know that the male had it and he got it from sexing around. And the question is, should I stay with this person? And the person replied, like, do you really want to stay with somebody that's cheating with you? And it's like, I get that. And at the end, she's like, well, I just wanted to get another, what's the word? Another opinion. Situations like that, it's not like you going to see if you got cancer and doctor tell you got cancer and you want to go to another doctor to get a second opinion. You blatantly see and know for a fact that this person is cheating on you, and the only thing you can sit up here and say, well, I just wanted to get another opinion. And And why I'm so passionate about that is because I sat in that chair. I watched it unfold in front of me, and I stayed like an idiot, which allowed me to go into places that I never thought that I would go, into dark places. And you shouldn't have to, because your worth, which I am going to hit on that in just a second, your worth is way more important than you thinking, oh well, I put 10 years in and I don't want to just I want to give that title roll up, and
Can,
it's already been given up.
basically, yeah. Can I just want to jump in right quick for one thing where you were saying about the 10 years that they already put in it. If that were money, they wouldn't do it. If they bought a car that they were told is a lemon and they bought it anyway, they wouldn't keep throwing good money after bad with new tires, new transmission, new upholstery, new leather seat. Oh, I've already put so much into it, I don't want to get rid of the rest of it. No. As soon as they figure out that it is not going to be what they expected it to be, that's a
Yep.
done deal. Why then do they gamble with much more important emotional currency and take
Mhm.
those kinds of risks? It doesn't make sense to me how people are logical and methodical in one aspect of their lives, and when it comes to the different aspect of their lives, that is relationships, they throw logic out the window and just go with whatever whim they think emotions are supposed to be spun around, that they're just supposed to do whatever they want. No, there may not be logical answers to every emotional situation, but there are certainly more logical answers to emotional situations than people give credit for. And this is one of those points exactly. If she knows he's cheating,
Yeah.
there's no sense in it.
The thing it is, and it's something that you state a lot in the book about society pushing a narrative that we've allowed, like a serious societal brainwash, to think
Yes.
that monetary and objects and all of these things outside of the natural bonding of a person is way important. So my value to you is less than your money value to me.
Right.
And because you matter of fact, this is another example that's popping in my head. I'm watching something, and this dude was going around, and he gave women three options: a drug dealer, a scammer, or 9 to 5. Nobody picked the 9 to 5. You know what? Matter of fact, I'm a probably hurt somebody's feelings, and I think they asked like three white girls. The white girls 9 to 5. All the black women scammer. Which I'm trying to figure out, why the heck would you want a scammer in the first place? I would prefer a drug dealer. I would have been okay with you being a drug dealer, regardless if the money's bad. You
I see what you're
it's
saying. Yeah. Lesser of two
yeah.
evils.
I'm like, they went back and forth. Drug dealer, scammer. And it wasn't until he got to the white ladies where it was like, a 9 to 5, 9 to 5. That, and that was his point. He was like, it's sad that our mindset in our community is that the best form of a relationship, especially for a woman to go out, because she has to go get the bag. A 9 to 5 person can't get the bag as easy and quick as a scammer and a drug dealer. So we want the bag so bad. Let me leave this man that's 9 to 5, that's probably putting in hard work, that can be that great title that you need as a husband, if that's what you're looking for. Better yet, a father to your kid, versus this scammer is probably going to scam you out your drawers and going to have you being that baby mama that's going to visit them at the jail. So it's
Baffled. Yeah.
Jalissa says, that's good provoking thought. Um she said just lost she was. I'm going to move to this one. Nowadays, it's easy to find people willing to line up for co-star roles with intentions of outshining the star instead of just positioning themselves where they are taking star roles. And what I mean about that is, again, going right back to this side chick where you know they're married. And I'm talking to the people that know that the man is married, or even the man knows she's married.
Right.
You do have some cases where the people don't know that these people like living double lives.
Right.
I'm not talking about you guys. I'm
Exactly.
actually talking about the women and the men that deliberately knows that there is a um
That
there's
they're in the
another
place.
yeah, there's another example that comes to mind where this woman was sitting on the bench and she made a post. And I don't know how true it is, but even if this post wasn't true, I'm sure that this happens in real life. Sitting on the bench, looking at her, well, she's a side chick, but she said her man with his wife and kids having fun, trying to figure out if she should be mad. The catcher is while she's doing that, she's at the same part on the opposite bench with her husband. so my so with that, I'm like, you a lot of people find themselves taking this role that they swear they want, side pieces, knowing the definition, side pieces.
Mhm.
You're just there for when I need whatever I need when I need it, and that's it. Okay, well, again, go right back to coach. I put in some time and I want to know if I can be a starter now. No.
Right.
Then you go start keying up cars. Then you start bashing. Then you start talking. And then you start. I don't think that puts more, I don't think that puts a bad view on the person in that relationship outside of the stupidity of you, the
I
person.
understand that. Yes. Yes, I understand that. That is, if I were to reconstruct what you're saying, what it sounds like to me is you're saying the person who uses a side chick or a side piece, they're not as wrong as the person who's mad at being a side piece for as long as they've been the side piece. Because
Yes.
the person who says, I'm only going to have you as a side piece, their intentions have been clear. Even if
Yes.
their intentions aren't right, they're clear.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then here's the side piece come and say, well, why can't it be different now? No, that's
Yep.
not where this was going from the beginning. So I hear what you're saying. I
Yep.
understand.
You're not condoning. You're not condoning the men and women that go out and find people to fill these awkward roles. I, again, like I say, I can't be mad at my ex-wife for the last 8 years of our marriage. I can only be mad at myself because I watched she was doing what she felt she needed to do for herself. I can't say that she was a bad person for doing so because I knew every inch of it.
Mhm.
The fact that I knew every inch of it, that blame is pointed more at me than anything. I can't be mad at her. And I don't
Mhm.
think people really sit down and soak in their I'm gonna say stupidity because it's a stupid act of the blame game because you're wanting the other person to be the bigger person and either break up with you or stop doing what they're doing and change when what again like I say 8 years this is going on.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I knew it wasn't changing. I knew nothing that I could do could change where she was at.
Right.
And so, and I say this to everybody, the counselor said it best. I can take your money, but you either need to be quiet and stop talking about it or you can leave. and I finally chose to leave, which that's where the changing the narratives of this show comes in at. And before I go into the changing the narrative and trying to figure out how we can better position ourselves when it comes down to titles, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yes. The one thing that I would like to share is your relationships will only be as healthy as you are.
Mm.
There are people who say that they want a relationship that's like at 9 or 10, but they won't deal with their own dysfunctions that have them working at like 4 or 5. So
Ah,
they want a relationship that's twice as good as what they're even capable of. And until they get down to being able to deal with those things, they're not going to be able to have what they claim that they want.
that is so. There's a woman we watch on Instagram. Her name is April Mason, I believe, and she was stating that practically somewhat the same thing. Where and I've actually hear a lot of people, and I've had to learn it myself. You know, it wasn't until after my marriage that I realized the only reason why I stayed is because I was broken. I thought that I had issues, but not as deep as they were until I got out and I was faced with coming home and realizing all of my hurt stemmed in my household. And I think um, God doesn't make a mistake when parts are moved. The mistake comes in when we don't move with those parts. Because sometimes those parts move and we jump out of the way and we're not on those parts that need to move for us, that's moving for us. And so we end up staying, or a matter of fact, jumping on those parts, moving with those parts, but then saying, let me run back and jump back on that last part that I was on. And that was me.
For life.
that,
Right.
that was me. And what I call it is being on the highway, taking that off ramp, and end up keep going on that circle, that ramp, and not getting back on the highway, getting on it,
Right.
going off. Yeah. So,
Good.
but changing the narrative. Let's see. I did not change that. Boop. Here we go. First course of action would be knowing where you stand with yourself, knowing your worth, and having love for oneself is way more important than seeking it from someone giving you a title role in their lifetime movie. Setting boundaries is a definite thing. Even if you do know your worth and who you are, setting boundaries is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Something I always tell people, one of the best things to do at the beginning of a relationship, or just even talking, even if you're just dating this person on the first night, always have those 10 things that'll make a relationship work for you, because it's either you're going to get a second date or this person is going to look at you and be like, if food was great, and I'll hit you up later and you ain't gonna get no call. Just plain and simple. Make sure going in that you are confident enough to turn down a role that doesn't fit the description you're looking for, as well having the confidence to walk away from a role that isn't beneficial. Now,
Right.
think about being beneficial. I don't mean like a cash cow. I don't mean that. Some folks be like, oh man, it's beneficial. So, I'm getting something out of it. No, I mean beneficial health wise, all around. If you got kids involved, an all around thing, the balance of it, it's not that, oh, this person spoils me and I'm not giving any energy to that person. That person is giving energy to me. No, not that form of beneficial, not that selfish benefit.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
so,
It's funny how you say that setting boundaries is important. Setting boundaries is absolutely important. I've known of people who are afraid to do that
Mm.
because they're so uh I'm going to blame this on being lonely. They're so lonely that they feel like if they tell the other person what their boundary is, then that person's going to run and that person won't be around for them to even have whatever kind of relationship with, even if it's just for companionship at that point. It will never be an exclusive relationship. It'll never be marriage. It'll never be anything beyond what it is. And they're afraid to have whatever it is be lost because telling that person up front what their boundaries are might run them off. I would say to that person, this is going to sound harsh. There are going to be people who say, you're not in my shoes, you don't know, but let that person leave. Let them go. If you have these things that are important to you, that are boundaries, we're going to pick on an easy one. There are women who are saying, I do not want to have sex with this guy until we are married. Even if they don't say married, they at least push it to at least until we're committed to each other. And once
Mm.
you tell a guy that there's not going to be a guarantee of sex in the next 48 hours, watch him leave.
Oh yeah, a lot of them leave.
And they don't want to be without a guy. I have personally never espoused the thought that a bad man is better than no man. And there are a lot of women who think that way.
Mm.
So they are
Hmm.
the ones who would have the difficulty setting these boundaries in the beginning. And they would even unfortunately go so far as to relax some of the boundaries that they have in place
Hmm.
just to keep his company.
Hmm.
These types of malformations of a relationship are the facade that comes with a title without the substance.
Mm. 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 See, again, I think that when you when you talk about that, there there's so many there's so many people right now, floating on Facebook, and they're constantly, and a lot of women, um where they're just preaching about how this person is not being who he say he is, or I can't get him to do right, I can't get him to do right, or I want this particular life with this person, and he just don't understand, because I'm this. I question anyone, male or female, if you're having to sit, and I question myself definitely. I knew my worth, but did I really know it?
Mhm.
Because I stayed with someone that misused my worth, that made me second guess my worth, and that made me eternally drop all boundaries and just fall victim to myself of I am going to say part of that loneliness and that aspect of that society stem of if a man can't bring home the bacon, then he's no man and no woman is never going to want him syndrome. And so you can't constantly punish yourself. And there are so many, and I say women because a lot of men just, excuse my language, just don't give a fuck. And they just go and they just get in there, they're notch on their belt and they're going on to the next person. But surely wouldn't want anybody to do their daughter the same way though. They're quick to go ahead and get a gun and go to the,
Exactly.
and ready to fight somebody if they, but I was talking to a man in the barbershop, and I was asking him after I heard him tell his son, I love you. And I was letting him know that, hey, teach your son how to be a husband. And he, first thing he says is, I don't know how to do that because I'm in the streets. And I'm like, that's sad that you basically telling yourself you're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now you're also telling yourself that you can't raise your son to respectfully respect a female, whether it's mom, another girl, just random, a sister, aunt, because you were preferred to be in the streets. And I hit him with some other stuff, the and I just felt a urge, a sense of it was all sex was the motivation in a lot of the relationships of what he was doing. And it was like, hey, that's one of the points that you have to stop. You have to separate yourself from, because once the sex is dried out, which a lot of us found out at the beginning of COVID, when we were made to be stuck in the house with a lot of people that we did not seriously know,
Right.
even though we were married 50 years.
Woo.
we, we did not know who we married because we were too busy working. We
That's
were
right.
too busy probably meeting up for sex, which sex was probably great. But now we're living in the house and finding out that this person doesn't put down the toilet seat. Men, again, I know I said this before. The answer to the toilet seat situation: just sit your butt down and pee. You don't even have to lift the toilet seat up. That's all you got to do. That does not make you a woman. It does not make you less of a man. What that does is that stops all the pain and nagging that you think a woman's going to give you. Just plain and simple. Just plain and simple. But with that being said, ma'am, do you have any closing?
Oh, yes. Closing thought would be, if you are seeking a title, seek a title that is equal to your value. That is what I would say, because anything of low level can also have a title, just like we discussed the whole baby daddy, baby
Yeah.
side chick, all of that kind of stuff. Those are titles, but they don't mean anything as far as value, as far as your value to that other person, other than the ways that you've allocated for that role that you feel for them. All you are is a sex buddy. All you are is this. All you are is that. And none of those things will ultimately equate to the value of a relationship that you actually want, whether it's with that person or somebody else. So if you're interested in having some kind of title or putting a label on your interaction with somebody, make sure that it's high enough to equal your actual worth. And the labels and titles that you settle for will show how valuable you think you are.
Yep. So I'm gonna add to that. Go find out who you are and value yourself. Yeah,
Mm,
go back to these points. It's just plain and simple. Um, you have to at some point set boundaries. You have to know yourself and find out what you like. You can't expect, and a lot of women do this or act like a man should be psychic. I'm not saying there's no such thing as that. Once you're together, you don't get this form of bond. Me and Lisa do it here and there where we're thinking alike, and then sometimes, even though I'm thinking like how I think she's thinking, and I still get what I shouldn't be getting. So, like the today, some stockings. Picked up the right stockings. Yep, I'm sure that's the one she want. But then I looked over and saw some other stockings. I'm gonna put that down. I'm gonna get that. Went to the store today. She had these stockings, and I'm thinking that she's getting the stockings for her sister. Now I'm gonna give the ones that you got to her because I like these. God darn it, I picked them up in the first place. See, nah. So it's not saying that you can't get this bond with your partner, but it's even better if you know yourself, what you like. I'm gonna tell you, if you women that like men, because we're in a world where Everybody likes everybody. And so I'm just, and you know what? I ain't even got to say that. Let me just say in general, because a listener is a listener. If you seriously have a partner that listens and is not listening to use what is being told to them to screw you over, that is
Mm-hmm.
like the best thing. And I mean that if you find yourself in that position, I would tell this person the in and outs of me, because right now what this person is doing is churning in their head. Is they're finding and they're figuring out ways on what can I do to make this person smile? You know what? Matter of fact, they just told me they like flowers. You get some roses sent to your job.
Yeah, I see that. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
someone tried to shut me down, and me and the watcher Jalissa has talked about this before, where I've definitely become an open book. And someone was like, if I was a female, it's coming from a female. I mean, not if I was, it's coming from a female standpoint. I wouldn't tell my story as much as you would, because people are liable, they likely to use that against you. And my thought of that is, that is true. I said, but my answer to that is, even if it is done, what does that make you? The fact that I gave you myself and you misused that, what does that make you? That makes you more of the bad person than me sitting up here and giving you everything, or just giving you enough so that you can be that bad person because you wanted to use it. I
Right.
think people end up shutting up and shutting down because they're too scared to give someone something that they might get used. So again, that's why I say in a lot of relationship, ask questions, a
Yeah.
lot of questions. And if a man run and say, man, you ask too many questions, it ain't right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. And
So,
wow.
ending the show, guys, I would like to tell you next Wednesday is, and I know that's why that person, um, I know why that person said that. I feel, I'm sorry, Miss Whitney. That person said, yeah, you need to go back and reread that. I told Lisa that really these past couple of days I've been kind of off with just reading and speaking in general. So yes, next week is your show. So that's why nobody else can come on. Next week's your show. And so basically, guys, next week we're gonna have Miss Whitney on, and she is going to go and indulge in implements and distractions from out of her book. Another great chapter that you see the little book behind her, guys. She's gonna indulge in it a little bit more and tell us why communication is key. I mean, um, I love Facebook business wise, and I love interacting. I love the fact that I'm able to do the lives here, but I'm just in Facebook. You can pull this video all you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Um, the social media in so many ways is kind of ruining the interaction when it comes to the touch and the closeness of what. And I'm only talking about relationships. I'm not talking about reaching out and keeping in contact with friends. No, I'm not saying that. Great platforms, but people are starting to use social media as a guideline of what life should be like. And and I'm not trying to say I'm a doctor. I am getting ready to go down the venture of being certified relationship coach. Which, even with that being said, that doesn't mean that I know everything, and I am trying to say that I know everything. But what I can say that life, only because I unfortunately subjected myself to pain, I know a lot when it comes to the do's and don'ts for relationships, which I know everybody's different, but even an inklet of what I've went through is possibly a big span of help. to at least one person out there. So if this helped anyone, I am glad that it did. I do feel this is my God-given purpose, and I shall push on. But you shall see Miss Whitney next Wednesday before Thanksgiving, giving us some great nuggets about communication. And if you're watching this on YouTube, guys, definitely go ahead and smash that like button and give us a thumbs up. And if you're on Facebook, share it. Uh, Great information. And we had a blast, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.